Deep in the jungle, a pyramid stands silent, holding a secret it refuses to share. What if the history we learned about the ancient Americas is only a fraction of the real story? We are about to journey through 25 of the world's most baffling enigmas, uncovering the puzzles left behind by incredible pre-Columbian civilizations. By the end, you will see this hemisphere's ancient past not as a simple timeline, but as a web of astonishing mysteries. We will explore cities that vanished overnight and massive earthworks whose creators remain unknown. What is the one ancient mystery you believe still holds the greatest secret? Scattered across a vast Peruvian desert plateau, enormous figures are etched into the very earth itself. These are the Nazca Lines, a series of massive geoglyphs so large they can only be fully appreciated from the sky. From a simple hummingbird with a wingspan stretching over 200 feet to a sprawling monkey with a coiled tail, these creations are monumental in every sense. On the ground, you would see little more than shallow grooves in the reddish gravel, but from above, a breathtaking gallery of art and geometry reveals itself. The precision is staggering, with lines running perfectly straight for miles across the rough terrain. The central puzzle is why. Why would a people without the ability to fly create art they could never see? One compelling theory suggests the lines formed a giant astronomical calendar, with certain shapes aligning with celestial events like the solstice sun or specific star clusters. Others believe they were sacred pathways, walked during rituals to call upon deities for water in an incredibly arid land. Perhaps they were even offerings to gods who they believed watched from the heavens. This leads to the equally baffling question of how. How did the Nazca achieve such scale and accuracy without a high vantage point? Archaeologists suggest they used simple tools and careful planning, perhaps scaling up small models using a grid system of stakes and ropes. The endurance of these lines speaks volumes about the culture that made them. The desert floor is uniquely stable, with a protective layer of sun-baked clay that has resisted erosion for well over 1,000 years. The Nazca did not just create art, they engineered a legacy meant to last, a permanent message whose meaning we are still struggling to decipher. Yet even the most enduring monuments can be abandoned. Far from the Nazca Desert, in the lush heart of Central America, the Maya civilization reached staggering heights of intellectual and architectural achievement. Their city-states were bustling metropolises, adorned with soaring pyramids and palaces, where astronomers tracked the stars and mathematicians conceived of the zero. Then, during the 8th and 9th centuries, something went terribly wrong. The southern lowland cities, places like Tikal and Palenque, were simply left. The stone calendars stopped being carved, the great plazas fell silent. This was not a single event, but a slow, chilling unraveling of a world. So what could cause a society of such sophistication to simply walk away from its greatest creations? The answer appears to be a perfect storm of catastrophes. Think of a civilization pushed to its absolute limit, and then the world itself began to turn against it. Scientists drilling into lake beds have pulled up sediment cores that act as a climate diary. These layers of mud tell a story of a profound and prolonged drought, one that stretched for decades, even centuries. In a region where water was life, this was a death sentence. Reservoirs dried up, crops failed repeatedly, and the social contract between the people and their divine rulers, the kings who were supposed to ensure rain and plenty, shattered. This environmental collapse was magnified by human conflict. Hieroglyphic texts on stone monuments, once thought to record only royal births and victories, reveal a darker history. They speak of escalating warfare, not just between kingdoms, but of a more brutal, endemic nature. City-states that were once allies turned on each other in a desperate competition for dwindling resources. This was not just about conquest, it was about survival, fueling a cycle of political instability and violence that tore the social fabric apart. Add to this the pressure of overpopulation, with forests cleared for agriculture and the land itself becoming exhausted, and you have a recipe for collapse. The deepest part of this mystery is not just why the southern cities fell, but why some in the north, like Chichen Itza, continued to thrive for centuries more. Did they develop better water management strategies, perhaps accessing underground rivers known as cenotes? Were their political systems more flexible, better able to adapt to the changing world? The contrasting fates of these cities suggest that collapse was not an inevitable fate, but a complex tragedy where geography, leadership, and sheer luck determined which civilizations would fade into the jungle and which would write another chapter. While the Maya faced collapse in their cities, another civilization left behind monuments so heavy, so permanent, they seemed to defy the very passage of time. In the humid lowlands of the Mexican Gulf Coast, the Olmec people carved their legacy in stone, and their most famous creations are the colossal heads. 17 of these immense sculptures have been discovered, each one a single, towering block of basalt weighing many tons. They are not abstract symbols, but strikingly human faces, each with a unique and powerful personality. They wear what look like protective helmets, their expressions a mix of serene authority and quiet contemplation. The sheer physical challenge of their creation is the first layer of this enigma. The basalt for these heads did not come from a local quarry. It was sourced from mountains dozens of miles away across rivers and swampland. How did the Olmec, without the wheel or draft animals, transport a stone block the weight of a school bus through such difficult terrain? The most accepted theory involves a combination of immense human labor, rollers made from logs, and possibly rafts for river travel, a logistical feat that speaks to a highly organized society. But the greater mystery is who these faces represent. Are we looking at portraits of powerful, individual Olmec rulers, immortalized in stone to project their authority for generations? Could they be champion players of the sacred Mesoamerican ball game, their helmets actually protective gear for a ritual sport that was a matter of life and death? Or do their distinct features hint at something even more profound? Some observers note that the facial characteristics of certain heads do not align with typical indigenous features of the region, leading to controversial and debated theories about possible contact with peoples from across the oceans. The truth is, we may never know their names or titles. The tools used to carve these masterpieces from such incredibly hard stone are another puzzle. Archaeologists suggest they used even harder stones like jade and obsidian, along with abrasives like sand and water, to painstakingly pound, grind, and polish the basalt over countless hours. This was not a quick process, it was an act of devotion, a monumental investment of time and skill. So what was their ultimate purpose? Were they placed in central plazas to watch over the people, serving as constant reminders of a ruler's power or a community's shared identity? Perhaps they were ancestral figures linking the living to a mythical past. Each head is a silent sentinel, a powerful individual whose story is lost, leaving only their stony gaze to challenge us across the centuries. That same impulse to carve meaning into the world is writ large on an entirely different scale at Chichen Itza. Here, the pyramid known as El Castillo does not just sit upon the land, it actively converses with the sky. This is not merely a temple, it is a masterpiece of architectural astronomy, a stone embodiment of the Maya calendar. Its 4 sides each have 91 steps, which, added to the single shared step at the top, creates a total of 365, one for each day of the solar year. But the true magic reveals itself with the setting sun on the spring and autumn equinoxes. As the light falls, the stepped corners of the pyramid cast a series of triangular shadows down the northern balustrade. These shadows connect with the massive stone serpent heads at the base, creating the undulating illusion of a giant feathered serpent, Kukulkan, slithering down from the heavens to the earth. This was not a happy accident, it was a meticulously calculated demonstration of power and knowledge. a way for the rulers to show they commanded the very cycles of time. The mysteries only deepen when you stand before it. A single clap of your hands at the base of the stairway produces a startling echo that does not sound like a clap at all. Instead, it reverberates as the distinct chirping cry of the sacred Quetzal bird. How did the builders engineer such a specific acoustic effect? It is believed the steps act as a diffracted sound radiator, with the timing of the echoes from each step combining to create that unique frequency. Was this intentional, a way to make the pyramid itself sing with the voice of the divine? The structure's role was likely multifaceted. It served as a colossal celestial observatory, its orientations marking the movements of the sun and planets. It was a profound statement of political and spiritual authority, a focal point where the ruler, as an intermediary to the gods, could demonstrate his connection to the cosmos. And it was undoubtedly a stage for powerful rituals, a place where the boundary between the earth and the heavens felt thin, and the descent of the serpent god could be witnessed by all. El Castillo was not just built to be seen, but to be experienced with all the senses, a living machine designed to manifest the sacred in light, sound, and stone. Far to the south, another civilization story was being written not in stone, but in sun-dried mud. The Moche of northern Peru were masters of their arid world, building immense adobe pyramids that rose from the desert like man-made mountains. The Huaca del Sol, or Pyramid of the Sun, was once a colossal political center, a structure containing an estimated 140 million adobe bricks. Their artisans crafted pottery so detailed and expressive it feels like a window into their lives, depicting everything from warriors and deities to scenes of surgery and weaving. Then, around the 8th century, their thriving society unraveled. The evidence points not to a single invader, but to a terrifying enemy from the sky and sea. Deep within ice cores from the Andes and in layers of sediment pulled from the ocean floor, scientists have found the signature of a climatic cataclysm. A mega El Niño, a warming of Pacific waters on a scale far beyond modern experience, unleashed chaos upon the Moche heartland. First came the rains, torrential and unending, causing rivers to burst their banks and sending devastating floods screaming down from the mountains. These floods were not gentle, they were apocalyptic, scouring away fields, canals, and entire villages. The adobe bricks of their great huacas, meant to last for ages in a dry climate, began to melt back into the earth. Then, as quickly as the deluge began, it ceased, replaced by its opposite, a crippling drought that stretched for 3 decades. Imagine the despair, your irrigation systems destroyed by floodwaters, only to then face a generation without rain. The social order, built on the promise that priest-kings could intercede with the gods for water and fertility, shattered. Archaeologists find chilling clues in the final layers of Moche sites. There is evidence of social unrest, with hastily built fortifications and weapons appearing in places they never had before. Most hauntingly, there is evidence of a shift in ritual practice. At sites like the Huaca de la Luna, the Pyramid of the Moon, the final periods show an increase in human sacrifice, with victims often showing signs of brutal treatment. Was this a desperate attempt to appease gods who had seemingly turned against them? This trauma may have triggered a profound ideological shift. The old ways, the beliefs that had sustained them for centuries, had failed. The people may have gradually abandoned their political centers and their old gods, their culture dissolving and their communities dispersing. They were not wiped out, but rather their society transformed, its people and some of their traditions eventually being woven into the fabric of the later Chimu civilization. The mystery of the Moche is not one of a sudden vanishing, but of a resilient people brought to a breaking point, forced by a changing world to let go of one identity and slowly merge into another. Across the Mississippi River, a different kind of power was being built, not from stone but from earth itself. The city of Cahokia was a true metropolis, the largest pre-Columbian settlement north of Mexico, a bustling hub where thousands lived and worked. At its heart stood Monk's Mound, a colossal earthen pyramid rising in 4 terraces to a height of 100 feet. Its base is larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza at its foundation, a truly monumental feat of engineering achieved basketful of earth by basketful of earth. Facing this great mound was a grand plaza of over 40 acres, a vast public space for ceremonies and markets, surrounded by more than 120 smaller mounds. At its peak around the year 1100, Cahokia was larger than London, a center of culture, trade, and political power that rivaled any contemporary European city. Yet by the mid-1300s, this thriving city was all but empty, its grand structures abandoned to the elements. So what could cause such a rapid decline after centuries of success? The city's very size may have been its undoing. Supporting a population of tens of thousands placed immense strain on the local environment. Vast tracts of forest were cleared for building and firewood, leading to deforestation and increased flooding. The game animals would have been hunted out, forcing a greater reliance on farming that may have exhausted the soil. This environmental pressure likely sparked social conflict as resources became scarcer and the authority of the ruling class was challenged. The society's complexity is revealed by its most enigmatic sites. Just to the west of Monk's Mound stood Woodhenge, a great circle of massive cedar posts that functioned as a sophisticated sun calendar. On the equinoxes, the sunrise would align perfectly with a key post, allowing the priests to mark the changing seasons with precision, dictating the timing of planting and sacred ceremonies. This scientific knowledge, however, was paired with a darker aspect of Cahokian power. Archaeological excavations at Mound 72 uncovered a chilling scene. The remains of more than 250 people, mostly young women, who appear to have been sacrificed in a single event. They were buried alongside a high-status man, suggesting this was a retainer sacrifice, a brutal display of a ruler's authority meant to accompany him into the afterlife. This evidence paints a picture of a society with a powerful, centralized leadership capable of commanding both the cycles of the sun and the lives of its people. The ultimate fate of Cahokia was likely a combination of these factors. A growing population strained the land, leading to food shortages and social unrest. The power of the rulers, once secured by grand ceremonies and even by force, may have crumbled under the pressure. The people did not vanish, but rather, they seem to have migrated away, joining or founding smaller communities elsewhere along the Mississippi and its tributaries. The great city was not destroyed by an outside force, but gradually depopulated, its people leaving behind the silent, grass-covered mounds as a testament to a lost American metropolis. Perched high in the Andean cloud forest, the stone terraces of Machu Picchu cling to a mountain ridge, a city that seems to float between the earth and the sky. This is the so-called lost city of the Inca, but its true purpose remains one of the great puzzles of the ancient Americas. Was it a secluded royal retreat for the Emperor Pachacuti, a private estate where he could escape the pressures of the capital at Cusco? Or was it a sacred sanctuary, a place of pilgrimage and communion with the mountain gods the Inca revered? The architecture itself offers conflicting clues. The presence of exquisite temples, like the Temple of the Sun with its perfectly carved stone altar, points to a profound religious significance. Yet there are also extensive residential sectors and over 700 agricultural terraces that suggest a functioning, self-sufficient community, perhaps an administrative center controlling the resources of this remote region. The precision of its construction is a marvel in itself. The Inca were masters of what is known as dry stone walling, cutting massive granite blocks so perfectly that not even a knife blade can fit between them. This technique, using no mortar whatsoever, allowed the structures to dance during earthquakes, settling back into place once the tremors subsided. This is why these walls still stand, while modern buildings with concrete would have crumbled long ago. The city is also a sophisticated astronomical observatory. The Intihuatana stone, an intricately carved rock pillar whose name means hitching post of the sun, was used to precisely track the solstices. On certain days, the sun would cast no shadow from the stone at all, a dramatic demonstration of the Incas' command over celestial cycles. So why was such a masterpiece of engineering and spirituality abandoned after only around 80 years of use? The most likely answer lies not in attack but in the silent, invisible invasion of European diseases. Smallpox and other illnesses sweeping ahead of the Spanish conquistadors devastated the Inca population. This demographic collapse would have shattered the labor system that maintained remote imperial sites like Machu Picchu. The specialized workers, the priests, and the nobility simply vanished or were called back to a collapsing empire. Its remote location, high on a nearly inaccessible ridge, then became its salvation. The Spanish never found it. The jungle slowly crept back, swallowing the terraces and hiding the city for centuries until it was brought to world attention in the early 20th century. Machu Picchu was not so much lost as it was gently released back to the mountains, its secrets kept safe until a more curious age could wonder at its silent, stony questions. Machu Picchu's silent stones leave us with a profound question. How did the Inca govern such a vast empire without what we would recognize as a writing system? The answer may lie not in ink and parchment, but in an intricate language of knots. This is the quipu, a device made of a main cord from which dozens of subsidiary strings of different colors and textures hang. To the untrained eye, it looks like an abstract tassel, but to a trained Inca accountant or historian, it was a sophisticated record-keeping device, a three-dimensional book. The position of each knot, the type of knot, the color of the cord, and even the spin and ply of the yarn itself held specific meanings. While we know for certain that quipus were used for accounting, to track tributes, census data, and storehouse inventories, many researchers now believe their function was far grander. They may have recorded laws, historical narratives, and even poetry, a complete written language expressed in fiber. The tragedy is that we lost the key. During the Spanish conquest, the colonists systematically sought out and destroyed thousands of quipus, viewing them as idolatrous objects or tools of a pagan administration. Worse still, they eliminated the quipucamayocs, the specialized class of readers who held the knowledge of how to interpret these complex codes in their minds. This was akin to burning all the libraries and executing every librarian in one fell swoop. The code was shattered. Modern scholars are now like detectives trying to reconstruct a lost language from a handful of fragmented clues. They have made some headway identifying patterns that likely represent numbers and even the names of places. One breakthrough method involves looking for what they call an accounting hierarchy, where the sums on lower chords add up to totals on a higher chord, much like a modern spreadsheet. But the real challenge lies in cracking the non-numerical data, the historical and narrative content. What epic stories of Inca emperors, what creation myths, what complex legal arguments are tied into those silent knots? The potential is staggering. If we could fully decipher the quipu, we would not just be reading Inca history, we would be hearing their own voices, understanding their world view directly without the filtering lens of their Spanish conquerors. Each quipu is a locked archive, waiting for the right combination to spring it open and let a lost civilization speak once more. High in the remote peaks of Colombia's Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, a different kind of lost city waits, one reclaimed not by jungle but by cloud and stone. This is Ciudad Perdida, the lost city of the Torona people, a sprawling complex of terraces and plazas that stair-step their way up a steep mountainside. Its rediscovery in the 1970s reads like an adventure novel, sparked by local treasure hunters who stumbled upon moss-covered stone steps rising into the mist. They followed the ancient staircase over 1,200 steps in all to find a city abandoned for centuries. The world of archaeology was soon on their heels, uncovering a metropolis of incredible engineering. The Taurona did not simply build on the mountain, they sculpted it, carving over 250 circular terraces into the slopes, held in place by massive stone retaining walls. These terraces created flat living spaces, prevented erosion, and formed a vast, interconnected network of plazas and ceremonial centers, all linked by a sophisticated system of stone-paved paths and drainage canals. This was a city designed to withstand the torrential rains of the cloud forest, a testament to a society in perfect harmony with a challenging environment. Yet the greatest mystery of Ciudad Perdida is not how it was built, but why it was left behind. Archaeological evidence suggests the city was abandoned sometime in the 16th century, likely before the Spanish conquistadors even reached this isolated region. So what could drive a people from a city that represented such a monumental investment of labor and spirit? The answer may lie with the very invaders the Taurona never met. While Spanish swords did not directly cause the city's fall, the diseases they brought did. Epidemics of smallpox and measles, traveling far faster than any soldier, swept through the Americas, devastating indigenous populations. It is believed these old-world plagues reached the Sierra Nevada, collapsing the complex social structure that sustained the city. The survivors, facing a shattered world, may have deliberately withdrawn from their grand stone city, dispersing into smaller, more isolated communities in the highest valleys. This is where the mystery finds a living thread. The indigenous Kogi people of the region are considered the direct descendants of the Taurona. They speak of Ciudad Perdida as Tayuna, their sacred heart and the center of the world. The Kogi Mamas, or spiritual leaders who are raised from childhood in darkness to attune their senses to the spiritual realm, see themselves as the guardians of this place. They believe the balance of the entire planet depends on the spiritual work they perform there. Their oral histories, passed down unchanged for generations, likely hold the key to understanding why Tayuna was abandoned and what its true purpose was. They view the terraces not just as foundations for homes, but as representations of a cosmic order. For them, the abandonment was not a defeat, but a necessary retreat to protect their knowledge and the world's spiritual equilibrium from a coming chaos, a chaos they see embodied in the modern world's environmental destruction. The silent stone terraces of Ciudad Perdida are not completely silent after all. They are watched over by living descendants who still hear the echoes of the city's original purpose, a purpose we can only understand by learning to listen. But the Andes were not the only mountains hiding ancient mysteries. Far to the north, in the highlands of central Mexico, lies the archaeological site of Cholula, the legendary capital of the Toltec people. The Toltecs present us with a fascinating puzzle, a civilization caught between history and myth. According to the Aztecs who came centuries later, the Toltecs were the master artists, the wise sages of a golden age. They were described as the founders of all civilization, the people who invented writing, medicine, and the calendar. Their very name, Toltec, came to mean artisan or wise one. But were they a real, powerful empire or a glorious fiction, a romanticized past invented by the Aztecs to legitimize their own rule? The ruins of Cholula offer some physical clues, but they also deepen the enigma. The most striking features are the massive stone statues known as the Atlantean figures. These towering warrior columns, each 15 feet tall, once stood atop a pyramid, their impassive faces staring out over the city. They are dressed for war with butterfly-shaped chest protectors and spears in their hands, yet they also hold intricate, non-functional devices that suggest a deeper ritual purpose. Alongside them are pillars carved with the undulating bodies of feathered serpents, the iconic symbol of the god Quetzalcoatl. This imagery points to the most enduring Toltec legend of all, the story of their god king, Quetzalcoatl. The tales say he was a wise and pious ruler who rejected human sacrifice, favoring the offering of butterflies and snakes instead. His reign was a time of perfect peace and prosperity. But he was opposed by a dark rival, the god Tezcatlipoca, who through trickery and sorcery managed to disgrace Quetzalcoatl and force him into exile. The legend says he departed to the east on a raft of serpents, vowing to return one day in a specific year. This story would echo through the centuries, and when the Spanish conquistadors arrived from the east in that very same year, the Aztec Emperor Moctezuma was paralyzed with fear, wondering if this was the returning god-king. The blending of a possible historical ruler with a divine persona creates an almost impossible tangle for archaeologists. Was Topiltzin Quetzalcoatl a real person, a reformist leader whose memory was later deified? Or was he always a god whose story was grafted onto a semi-historical kingdom to give it weight? The city of Cholula itself adds to the confusion. It was a significant and powerful center, with evidence of influence in art and architecture seen as far away as Chichen Itza. But its scale and grandeur do not quite match the epic descriptions left by the Aztecs. This has led some scholars to suggest that the Aztec idea of Tollan, the legendary Toltec capital, was a composite blending memories of Cholula with those of even older cities like Teotihuacan. The mystery of the Toltecs, then, is not just about who they were, but about how civilizations construct their own past, turning history into a powerful legend that can shape the destiny of empires yet to come. For centuries, the Amazon was seen as a vast, untouched wilderness, a green desert incapable of supporting large-scale civilizations. This entire narrative is now crumbling. The myth of the pristine rainforest is being systematically dismantled by a technology that sees through the trees, revealing the ghost of a lost world beneath the canopy. Deforestation, while an ecological tragedy, has accidentally peeled back the layers, exposing the tops of massive earthworks. But the true revolution has come from LiDAR, a laser mapping system fired from aircraft. By digitally stripping away the dense vegetation, LiDAR has unveiled a hidden landscape of staggering complexity. Across the Brazilian state of Acre and into Bolivia, hundreds of enormous geometric shapes are etched into the earth. There are perfect circles, squares, and octagons, some connected by long, straight causeways that run for miles. These are not random clearings, they are geoglyphs, enormous earthworks on a scale that rivals the Nazca Lines. The sheer number and size of these structures force a complete rethinking of Amazonian history. This was not a virgin forest with scattered, simple tribes. It was the home of a sophisticated, previously unknown civilization capable of organizing labor on a massive scale. So what was the purpose of these colossal designs, built with such effort in a place where the jungle seems to reclaim everything in a matter of years? The theories are as intriguing as the discoveries themselves. Some of the enclosures, with their deep ditches and high banks, could have been defensive fortifications protecting settlements from attack. Others, laid out with precise geometric alignment, strongly suggest they were ceremonial centers, sacred spaces for rituals that connected the community to the cosmos. Perhaps the most compelling idea involves sophisticated landscape engineering. Many of these earthworks are integrated with the region's hydrology, forming complex water management systems. They might have been used for drainage, for aquaculture, or to enrich the soil in a land where natural nutrients are quickly leached away by heavy rains. This points to a society that did not just live in the Amazon, but actively shaped and managed it. They likely practiced a form of agroforestry, cultivating useful trees and plants in a managed landscape that supported a much larger population than we ever thought possible. The ultimate mystery these geoglyphs present is not just what they were for, but what happened to the people who built them. Did they, like the Maya, fall victim to environmental shifts or social collapse? Or were they decimated by European diseases that swept inland long before any explorer set foot there, their grand earthworks quickly swallowed by the waiting forest? These silent, geometric clearings are a profound reminder that some of humanity's greatest stories are still hidden, not in deep jungles or distant deserts, but just beneath our feet, waiting for the light to find them. These geometric earthworks of the Amazon are not the only American mystery born from a harsh environment. In the high desert of the American Southwest, the ancestral Pueblones, once known as the Anasazi, built a cultural hub that seems to defy its own surroundings. Chaco Canyon, a dry and windswept place in what is now New Mexico, became the site of spectacular architectural achievements. The most striking are the great houses, massive multi-story structures built with a staggering level of precision. Pueblo Bonito, the largest, rose 4 and 5 stories high and contained perhaps 700 rooms, all laid out in a sweeping D-shaped curve that faced the south. The masonry is the true marvel, with thin, flat stones carefully selected and shaped, then set in a complex pattern that created strong, beautiful walls. This was not haphazard construction. It was a masterclass in engineering, planned and executed with a vision that spanned generations. The scale of their ambition extended far beyond the canyon walls. A network of roads radiates out from Chaco, roads that are remarkably straight and wide, cutting across the rugged landscape. They pushed through arroyos and climbed over mesas with an engineering determination that suggests a purpose far greater than simple footpaths. Yet many of these roads, which run for dozens of miles, seem to lead to no obvious destination, ending abruptly at a cliff edge or a simple small site. So what was their function? They were likely not for trade caravans or everyday travel, but rather sacred pathways, formal processional routes that connected Chaco Canyon to outlying communities in a spiritual and political network. This idea of a central hub is supported by evidence of long-distance trade. Archaeologists have found macaw feathers from central Mexico, copper bells, and seashells from the Pacific coast within the rooms of Pueblo Bonito. Chaco was not an isolated outpost, it was a cosmopolitan center, a place where goods, ideas, and people converged, which makes its ultimate fate all the more baffling. Around the year 1150, this flourishing center was completely abandoned. The great houses fell silent. Why would a people walk away from such a monumental investment of labor and culture? The most immediate suspect is a profound drought that gripped the region for decades. In a place where rainfall was always precarious, a prolonged period of aridity would have pushed an already strained agricultural system to the breaking point. But drought alone may not be the full story. The very construction of Chaco may have contributed to its downfall. To build those great houses and fire the plaster for their walls, the people needed vast quantities of timber. They cut down entire forests of ponderosa pine, hauling the logs from mountains over 50 miles away. This deforestation would have accelerated soil erosion, further reducing the land's ability to support a concentrated population. This environmental stress likely triggered social upheaval. The highly stratified society, with its powerful elite directing the grand constructions, may have seen its authority crumble as resources became scarcer. Yet there is another, more profound theory. Perhaps this was not a collapse but a spiritual migration. The descendants of the ancestral Pueblones, the modern Hopi and Pueblo people, speak of this not as a flight from disaster, but as a deliberate movement, a part of their sacred journey. They believe their ancestors fulfilled their purpose at Chaco and then moved on, carrying their knowledge with them to new homes. This is supported by the structures themselves, which are not just buildings but celestial observatories. The sun dagger petroglyph on Fajada Butte, for instance, where a sliver of sunlight bisects a spiral carving on the summer solstice, is a perfect example of their deep astronomical knowledge. They built a world in alignment with the cosmos, and when that alignment was complete, they left, leaving behind silent stone testaments to a civilization that looked to the stars for its timing and its purpose. Standing guard atop the main pyramid at Chala, the Atlantean figures are a sight to freeze the blood. These four colossal stone warriors, each 15 feet tall, are more than mere statues. They are pillars of power carved from solid basalt. Their faces are stoic and impassive, framed by elaborate headdresses that resemble stylized helmets, and they clutch in their hands not simple spears, but the distinct and deadly atlotls, the spear-throwing devices that gave Toltec warriors a terrifying advantage in battle. The sheer physical presence of these figures is the first layer of the puzzle. How were such massive blocks of stone quarried, transported, and then raised to this commanding height? The engineering feat alone speaks of a society with immense resources and organizational skill. But the deeper mystery lies in their identity. Who or what do these silent sentinels represent? The most straightforward interpretation is that they are idealized portraits of the Toltec warrior class itself, immortalized in stone to project an image of invincible strength and military order. Their rigid posture and identical weaponry suggest a formalized, almost regimented warrior society, the backbone of the Toltec state. Yet their location atop the temple, a space typically reserved for the divine, hints at a more profound meaning. Could they be deified ancestors, warrior heroes from a mythical past now watching over the city? Or are they something else entirely, perhaps stone embodiments of the four cardinal directions, the four pillars that hold up the sky in Mesoamerican cosmology? The iconic feathered serpents carved on nearby pillars inevitably draw a connection to the god Quetzalcoatl. Some scholars suggest the Atlanteans might represent his attendants, or even a militaristic aspect of the plumed serpent god himself, a far cry from the peaceful priest king of legend. The intricate, almost mechanical-looking objects they hold in their other hand deepen the enigma. These are not weapons, but complex T-shaped devices whose purpose remains debated. They could be symbols of authority, ritual bloodletters, or even stylized representations of the breath of life, a concept known as ehecatl. The mystery of the Atlanteans is not a single question, but a web of possibilities. Were they meant to intimidate, to inspire, or to connect the earthly realm of the Toltec army to the celestial order of the gods? Their stony silence offers no easy answers, only the imposing weight of their presence, a permanent reminder of a power whose true nature is carved in stone, yet remains just beyond our grasp. The stoic warriors of Chila stand as a testament to a world whose borders we thought we understood, but another discovery made thousands of miles away shatters that simple map entirely. In the parched sands of China's Tarim Basin, archaeologists made a find that defies all conventional history, the stunningly preserved mummies of a people who should not have been there. These individuals, dating back as far as 4,000 years, have striking European features with long noses, red and blonde hair, and bodies clad in beautifully woven textiles of a style that looks unmistakably Celtic. Here, in the heart of Asia, were people from the West preserved by the dry desert air for millennia. Their very existence ignites one of archaeology's most captivating and contentious debates. Could there have been significant transoceanic contact long before Columbus or the Vikings? Were these mummies evidence of a lost migration, a branch of humanity that trekked eastward across the steppes? Or do they point to something even more radical, ancient voyages across vast oceans? This single mystery opens a Pandora's box of other enigmatic clues. It forces us to re-examine the colossal stone heads of the Olmec, with their broad features and full lips that some have controversially suggested bear a resemblance to people of African descent. Could these be portraits of visitors from another continent, honored and immortalized in stone by a mystified local population? The evidence is hotly debated, with mainstream science often pointing to the natural diversity of indigenous facial features, yet the questions persist. What if the ancient world was far more interconnected than our textbooks allow? What if the oceans were not impassable barriers, but highways for a few intrepid and now forgotten explorers? The mummies of the Tarim Basin do not provide easy answers, but they stand as permanent, silent challenges to our neat historical narratives. daring us to consider a much more complex and intertwined human story. The enigma of the Atlanteans pales before the organizational mystery of a far greater city. Teotihuacan, the city of the gods, was a metropolis of staggering scale, home to perhaps 125,000 people at its zenith around the year 450. Its sheer size is not the true wonder, however, but rather the unique way its people lived. Unlike the royal palaces found in nearly every other ancient civilization, Teotihuacan's residents dwelled in vast, labyrinthine apartment compounds. These were not simple huts, but sophisticated, multi-family dwellings built of stone and plaster, arranged around central courtyards. Each compound was a mini neighborhood, a self-contained world with its own kitchens, shrines, workshops, and drainage systems. They were designed to house entire extended families or groups of artisans who shared a trade. Archaeologists have uncovered compounds dedicated to obsidian workers, where the floors are still littered with tiny chips of the volcanic glass, and others for potters, their courtyards filled with the remnants of kilns. This reveals a city organized not by a king's decree, but by profession and kinship, a level of urban planning that feels remarkably modern. This leads to the city's central, haunting mystery. Who was in charge? Walk the entire length of the Avenue of the Dead, from the Pyramid of the Moon to the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, and you will find no grand statues of a ruler, no stelae carved with a dynastic history celebrating a royal lineage. The art of Teotihuacan is powerful, but it is strangely impersonal. It is filled with repeating motifs of nature gods, like the storm god Tlaloc and the feathered serpent, but no individual human faces are elevated above the rest. So how did this massive, diverse city maintain social order, artistic standards, and economic stability for centuries without a visible, singular leader? The governing system may have been a form of collective rule, perhaps a council of powerful elders from the most influential apartment compounds, or a shared priesthood that managed the city's immense spiritual and economic resources. They would have governed through a shared ideology, a common set of beliefs that bound the potter, the obsidian napper, and the farmer together in a single cosmic purpose. This system created an astonishingly stable society, one that lasted for hundreds of years and influenced the entire Mesoamerican world. And then, around the year 550, it ended in fire and fury. The city's core was systematically burned, temples were defaced, and the grand ceremonial precincts were left in smoldering ruins. This was not an accident or an outside invasion. The evidence points to a violent internal uprising. The people of the very apartment compounds that had sustained the city for so long appear to have turned on its central institutions. Was it a revolt against a ruling class that had become too powerful and oppressive, even if they left no statues of themselves? Did a prolonged drought shatter the social contract, leading the populace to believe their leaders had lost the favor of the gods? Or had the system of shared rule simply fractured under the weight of its own success, with competing factions tearing the city apart from within? Teotihuacan stands as a radical experiment, a vast, flourishing city that seemingly rejected the cult of the individual ruler, only to be consumed by the very collective power that built it. The mystery of Teotihuacan's silent rulers stands in stark contrast to another enigma, one carved not from stone but from shimmering, flawless quartz. The legend of the crystal skulls tells of artifacts of impossible perfection, objects so masterfully carved they were thought to be the work of ancient Mesoamerican gods or lost civilizations. These skulls, often attributed to the Maya or Aztec, are mesmerizing. They are carved from single blocks of clear or milky quartz, their surfaces polished to a glass-like finish. The most famous among them, the Mitchell Hedges skull, is particularly haunting with its detachable jawbone that fits seamlessly into the cranium. The technical challenges of such a creation are immense. Quartz crystal is an incredibly hard substance, rating a 7 on the Mohs scale of mineral hardness. This means it cannot be carved with traditional metal tools, which would shatter against its unyielding surface. To shape it, a craftsperson would need diamond-tipped tools and motorized equipment, technology that simply did not exist in the pre-Columbian world. Even more baffling is that the skulls were allegedly carved against the natural grain of the crystal, a method that defies conventional lapidary wisdom and would have made the brittle quartz prone to splintering and shattering with every strike. How could an ancient artisan have achieved this without modern knowledge? The romantic answer was that they possessed lost technologies or supernatural aid. The historical truth, however, is far more earthly. These crystalline marvels began appearing on the European antiquities market in the second half of the 19th century, a time of immense public fascination with the exotic and the occult. They were almost exclusively sold through a single source, a French antiquities dealer named Eugene Bobin. His timing was perfect, capitalizing on a craze for all things Mesoamerican following major archaeological exhibitions. For decades, museums and private collectors proudly displayed these skulls as priceless relics of a mysterious past. The turning point came with modern scientific analysis. Under high-powered microscopes, researchers found telltale marks that metal tools could not have made. The surfaces of the skulls showed evidence of being carved with jewelers' rotary wheels, instruments coated with diamond dust that only became available in the 19th century. The polishing was done with modern abrasives like silicon carbide. The crystal itself was traced to sources in Brazil and Madagascar, regions far outside ancient Mesoamerican trade routes. The verdict was inescapable. The crystal skulls were beautiful, ingenious, and masterful forgeries, created in European workshops probably in the 1800s and 80s. So why does the myth endure so powerfully in books and films? It speaks to a deep and human desire to believe that ancient peoples possessed knowledge we have since forgotten, a secret wisdom that could unlock mysteries of the universe. The skulls represent a tangible link to a romanticized, more magical past, a past where advanced technology and spiritual power were one. We want to believe that such perfection was possible, that our ancestors were capable of miracles we can no longer comprehend. The real mystery of the crystal skulls, then, is not about their origin, but about our own enduring need for wonder and our willingness to see magic in the cold, hard facts of science. Two great pyramids once defined the Moche world, standing as starkly different as the powers they represented. On one side was the Huaca del Sol, the Pyramid of the Sun, a colossal mountain of adobe bricks. This was the political engine of the empire, an administrative fortress believed to contain over 140 million hand-made bricks, many stamped with symbols of the ruling clans. It was the center of secular power, a place of governance, trade, and the daily business of running a civilization. Directly facing it across a barren plain stood its spiritual counterpart, the Huaca de la Luna, the Pyramid of the Moon. This was not a fortress of earthly rule, but a sanctuary of the sacred, and its walls tell a far more terrifying story. While the Sun Pyramid was built for scale, the Moon Pyramid was a canvas for the divine, its outer walls covered in brilliantly colored murals that depict a recurring, fearsome deity. This is Ai Peak, the decapitator god, a snarling, fanged figure often shown holding a crescent-shaped knife in one hand and a severed head in the other. The relationship between these two structures is the core of the Moche mystery. They were not rivals, but two halves of a single system, a symbiotic partnership between the political authority of the Huaca del Sol and the terrifying spiritual power of the Huaca de la Luna. The rulers in the Sun Pyramid managed the material world, while the priests in the Moon Pyramid negotiated with the cosmic one, and the primary currency of that negotiation was human life. Excavations at the Huaca de la Luna have uncovered grim, irrefutable evidence of large-scale ritual sacrifice. In one plaza, archaeologists found the skeletons of more than 70 young men, their bones showing signs of brutal, repetitive violence and, in many cases, clear evidence of having their throats cut or being dismembered. Their bodies were then left exposed to the elements, and later the skeletons were carefully rearranged, often covered with a new layer of clay plaster, sealing them into the sacred landscape. This was not random killing, it was a highly structured ceremonial act. Who were these victims? Analysis of their teeth and bones suggests they were not locals, but warriors captured from rival valleys. This reveals a chilling cycle of Moche power. The state, centered at the Huaca del Sol, would wage ritualized warfare to capture prisoners. Those prisoners were then brought to the Huaca de la Luna and offered to the decapitator god. What cosmological drama was being performed here? The sacrifice was likely seen as essential to maintaining the cosmic order, a way to repay the gods for the gift of water and fertility in an unforgiving desert environment. The spilling of blood was believed to nourish the earth and ensure the continuation of life itself. The power of the ruler in the Sun Pyramid was therefore dependent on the gruesome rituals performed in the shadow of the Moon Pyramid. One provided the prisoners, the other provided the divine sanction. This symbiotic relationship sustained Moche society for centuries, a fragile balance between the power of the state and the fear of the gods, all played out in the stark contrast between two adobe pyramids standing sentinel over the desert. Far to the north of the Maya and the Moche, a different kind of power center emerged in the woodlands of what is now Oklahoma. Here, the Spiro Mounds represent one of the most extraordinary and perplexing sights of the Mississippian world. At its heart was the Craig Mound, a massive earthen lodge that was not merely a burial place, but a sealed subterranean treasury. For generations, this site served as a revered necropolis for the society's elite, a sacred resting place that accumulated unimaginable wealth. Within its darkened chambers, priests interred the honored dead alongside a breathtaking array of grave goods. There were intricately engraved conch shells from the Gulf of Mexico, depicting warriors and supernatural creatures in a complex, swirling art style. There were beautifully worked copper plates from the Great Lakes region, hammered thin and embossed with the likeness of a weeping eye, a symbol of a celestial hawk or falcon god. Rolls of finely woven fabric, preserved by the unique conditions within the mound, hinted at a mastery of textiles lost to time. This was not a hidden hoard, but a purposefully assembled collection of the most powerful objects in the known world, all gathered in one location. This accumulation was possible because Spiro sat at the crossroads of the southeastern ceremonial complex, a vast interconnected network that linked societies from the Atlantic coast to the Great Plains. Think of it as a spiritual and economic internet where ideas, rituals, and elite goods flowed along river highways. A shell carved in Florida might be traded for copper from Wisconsin, with both eventually finding their way to the priests at Spiro. This exchange system shared a common set of religious symbols, a visual language of winged serpents, skulls, and crosses that represented a shared cosmology across a continent. The central mystery of Spiro is its dramatic trajectory. For centuries, it was one of many important centers. Then, around the 13th century, it exploded into unprecedented prominence, becoming the primary funnel for this vast exchange network. Why here? Why then? Perhaps a charismatic leader consolidated power, or a new religious movement centered on the Craig Mound as an axis mundi, a spiritual pivot point for the entire region. Its location may have offered a strategic advantage, controlling the flow of critical resources like Arkansas quartzite, a prized material for making stone tools. Whatever the reason, its zenith was brilliant and brief. The final act is the most puzzling of all. Sometime in the 15th century, the people of Spiro did not simply abandon the site, they deliberately and ceremonially closed it. They sealed the sacred chambers of the Craig Mound, methodically blocking the entrances with earth and clay. This was not an act of flight, but one of profound ritual significance. It was as if they were mummifying the entire complex, preserving its spiritual power for eternity, and effectively turning their greatest treasure house into a permanent tomb. What could compel a people to willingly lock away the very source of their prestige and connection to the divine? Did a shifting climate or political landscape break the trade networks that sustained their power, making the great treasury obsolete? Or was this a theological decision, a belief that the world was entering a new cycle and that the old gods and their earthly relics needed to be returned to the earth from which they came? The sealed mounds of Peru stand as a silent, deliberate farewell, a civilization carefully burying its own heart. The seamless stonework of the Inca is a puzzle that defies both time and physics. At sites like Sacsayhuaman, which looms over the old Inca capital of Cusco, you are confronted by walls built from stones so colossal they seem like the work of giants. These are not simple blocks, but polygonal masterpieces, each one a unique geometric shape with multiple interlocking sides, fitted against its neighbors with a jeweler's precision. The joints are so impossibly tight that you cannot slide a razor blade or even a single piece of paper between them. This was not mere construction. It was a form of three-dimensional stone knitting, creating walls that have withstood centuries of powerful Andean earthquakes. When the ground shakes, these interlocked stones dance as one, settling back into place once the tremors pass, while modern concrete and mortar structures crumble around them. The sheer logistics of their creation is the first layer of this enigma. How did a people without the wheel, without iron, and without draft animals move stones weighing up to 120 tons from quarries miles away, across treacherous mountain rivers and ravines? The most accepted theory involves immense human labor, with thousands of workers using ropes, levers, and log rollers to inch these behemoths into place. At Ollantaytambo, you can still see the road they built, a smoothed ramp ascending from the river valley to the temple high above, a testament to their incredible determination. But the transportation is only half the mystery. How did they achieve such a perfect fit with nothing harder than bronze tools and stone hammers? The surfaces are not just flat, they are subtly convex, creating a powerful interlocking bond. The process was likely one of trial and error, a technique known as bedding. Craftsmen would have shaped a stone roughly, then repeatedly lowered it onto the one below, using a colored paste to mark the high spots. They would then painstakingly grind down those spots with stone hammers and abrasive sand, lifting and lowering the massive block over and over until the fit was flawless. This was a process that could have taken months for a single stone, a project spanning generations. This explanation of pure, patient skill is compelling, yet the scale and perfection have fueled more speculative ideas. Could the Inca have possessed a lost knowledge, such as a plant-based chemical agent that could temporarily soften the hard granite and andesite, allowing them to mold the stone like clay before it hardened again? Some have even suggested the use of acoustic levitation, theorizing that specific sound frequencies could have been used to make the massive stones weightless, allowing priests to guide them effortlessly into position with their minds. While there is no archaeological evidence for these more extraordinary theories, they speak to the profound awe this stonework inspires. The true secret may be more profound than any single technique. It was a cultural obsession with permanence and harmony, a belief that a structure was not truly finished until it was woven into the living rock of the mountain itself. They were not just building walls, they were performing a sacred act, binding their empire together one perfect, seamless stone at a time. That seamless stonework represents a physical language of power, but the ancient Americas also possessed a written one. Across Mesoamerica, scribes filled books with the accumulated knowledge of their civilizations. These were codices, long strips of fig bark paper or deerskin, folded like an accordion into a book. Their pages were not filled with simple pictures, but with a complex blend of hieroglyphs and pictograms, a sophisticated writing system that recorded everything from royal genealogies and historical triumphs to detailed astronomical charts and sacred rituals. Imagine a volume that could predict the movements of the planet Venus with astonishing accuracy, or another that detailed the properties of hundreds of medicinal plants. These libraries were the intellectual heart of their world, containing thousands of years of observation, history, and belief. Then came the fire. In the 16th century, Spanish friars, most notably Diego de Landa, launched a systematic campaign to eradicate indigenous religion. Viewing the codices as instruments of the devil, pagan works that hindered the conversion of the native population, they gathered them into vast piles in town squares and set them ablaze. In a single catastrophic act, entire libraries were turned to ash. The loss is almost incomprehensible. We are not talking about a few books, but the complete recorded memory of entire civilizations, the equivalent of burning every library in Europe during the Renaissance. The depth of the mystery lies in the void it created. What epic poems, what philosophical treatises, what detailed histories of kings and conquests were lost forever in those flames. We are left with only 4 surviving Maya codices that we know are authentic, named for the cities where they now reside, the Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and Grolier codices. Each is a tantalizing, fragmented glimpse into a lost intellectual universe. The Dresden Codex, for example, contains incredibly precise astronomical tables that allowed Maya priests to predict eclipses and the cycles of Venus. Deciphering these few survivors is a painstaking scholarly detective story. Researchers must cross-reference the glyphs with inscriptions on stone monuments and pottery, slowly building a vocabulary from a language that was nearly silenced. Every symbol translated is a small victory, a single word pulled back from the void. The greatest mystery is not just what we know we lost, but what we do not even know was there. What secrets of medicine, what understandings of the natural world, what entire literary genres vanished in the smoke of those ideological bonfires? The handful of surviving codices are not just artifacts, they are fragile messengers from a world we can now only partially reconstruct, a haunting reminder of the profound cost of cultural destruction. Rising from the Guatemalan rainforest, the stone towers of Tikal tell a story of ambition carved in limestone. These are not just monuments but history books, their surfaces covered in intricate hieroglyphs that record the lives of Maya kings. For generations, these stelae stood as a continuous chronicle of power, victory, and divine right. Then, the carving simply stopped. For over 100 years, from the late 6th into the 7th century, the stones of Tikal fell silent. This period, known as the hiatus, is a gaping hole in the city's history, a mystery written in empty space. What could silence a kingdom so powerful it could erect these towering testaments to its own glory? The answer appears to lie not in the city itself, but in the ambitions of a rival. During this time, a place called Caracol, a vassal state once under Tikal's influence, grew in strength and audacity. Hieroglyphic texts from Caracol boast of a catastrophic victory over Tikal's king, known as Double Bird, in the year 562. This was not just a battle lost, it was a political and spiritual decapitation. The sacred ruler, the linchpin connecting the people to the gods, may have been captured and sacrificed. Such a devastating defeat would have shattered the royal dynasty's divine mandate, throwing the city into a prolonged crisis of leadership and faith. The silence on the stelae suggests a kingdom in trauma, its political structure in disarray, and its people questioning the very foundations of their world. Then, after more than a century of darkness, a new voice emerges from the stone. A king named Jasor Chan Awil I ascends the throne, and in the year 695, he does something extraordinary. He leads his revitalized army in a star war, a specific type of celestial-based campaign, against Tikal's age-old rival Calakmul. He wins a decisive victory, and the captured effigies of Calakmul's patron gods are paraded in triumph back at Tikal. This victory was so profound it broke the long silence. Jasor Chan Awil immediately commissioned a new generation of stelae, proudly depicting himself in full regalia, standing atop a bound captive. His narrative was one of restoration, a deliberate act of rewriting history to proclaim the return of Tikal's rightful power. He even orchestrated his own eternal legacy, building the magnificent Temple One, the very pyramid that now defines the Tikal skyline as his final resting place. These inscriptions transformed him from a mere king into a savior figure, the man who rescued his city from a century of shame and restored its voice to the world. The stones of Tikal are therefore more than a record. They are a weapon in a war of perception, a permanent propaganda campaign carved in stone for both the people and the gods to see. While the Aztecs forged a vast empire through conquest, one neighboring power stood unbroken. The Purépecha Empire, known also as the Tarascans, built a formidable kingdom in the mountains and lake lands of western Mexico, a civilization that remains one of history's great counterfactuals. They were the one major state the Aztec war machine could never subdue. This was not a matter of luck, but of superior military technology and strategic genius. While the Aztecs fought with obsidian-bladed clubs, the Purépecha had mastered the art of metallurgy, crafting terrifyingly effective weapons from copper. Their soldiers wielded copper axes and sharp spear points, giving them a distinct and brutal advantage on the battlefield. Imagine the shock of an Aztec warrior, his obsidian sword shattering against a durable copper shield. This technological edge was born from their control of rich metal ores, a resource the Aztecs lacked, and it allowed the Purépecha to create a professional army that could repel any invasion. Their capital city, Tizintzatzin, reflected their unique identity. Instead of the stepped pyramids of their rivals, they built yacatas, immense T-shaped platforms that rose in a distinctive linear fashion, often facing the serene waters of Lake Pátzcuaro. These structures, unlike anything else in Mesoamerica, symbolize a culture that deliberately set itself apart. The origins of this powerful people are themselves a mystery. Their language, Purépecha, is an isolate, unrelated to Nahuatl spoken by the Aztecs or any other major language group in the region. This has led to theories that they might have been relatively recent migrants from further south, arriving with their advanced metalworking knowledge already intact. The border between these two empires hardened into a heavily fortified war zone, a desolate no-man's land patrolled by garrisons from both sides. They existed in a state of perpetual Cold War, with occasional flare-ups into major yet inconclusive conflicts. The Aztecs, despite their overwhelming strength elsewhere, were consistently bloodied and repelled. This raises a profound question. Why did these two complex societies, with similar gods, similar practices of human sacrifice, and a shared level of political sophistication, never find a way to coexist or merge? The answer may lie in a fundamental cultural and ideological divide. The Purépecha saw themselves as fundamentally different, a chosen people of their central god Curicauri, the god of fire, and they viewed the Aztecs with contempt. This fierce independence, backed by copper weapons and a fortified homeland, created a stalemate that lasted for generations. The arrival of the Spanish conquistadors shattered this balance forever. When Hernán Cortés arrived, the Aztec Emperor Moctezuma reportedly sent messengers to the Purépecha king, urging a united front against the strange, bearded invaders. The Purépecha king, Tangakchuan II, refused. He saw the Spanish not as a common threat, but as a potential weapon to finally crush his ancient enemy. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. After the Spanish destroyed the Aztec capital, they immediately turned their attention west, and with the help of Aztec allies who knew the Purépecha's weaknesses, they quickly subdued the empire. The greatest mystery is what might have been. If the Spanish had never landed, would the Purépecha have eventually fallen to Aztec persistence, or would their technological advantage have allowed them to outlast their rivals and perhaps even expand? Their story is a haunting reminder of a path not taken, a powerful, independent America that vanished before it could write its own future. This vast network of exchange was not confined to the empires of Mesoamerica. While the Purepecha forged their kingdom with copper, another, far more enigmatic system was flourishing across eastern North America, one built not on conquest but on connection. Across a vast swath of land, from the Great Lakes down to the Gulf of Mexico, a remarkable cultural phenomenon known as the Hopewell Interaction Sphere united diverse peoples for centuries. They did not build a centralized empire with a single ruler, but instead created a shared world of ceremony and art, linked by a web of exchange that spanned the continent. At the heart of this network were breathtaking earthworks, colossal geometric enclosures, and burial mounds that transformed the landscape. In places like the Newark earthworks in Ohio, you can still walk beside giant circles, octagons, and squares, all precisely aligned with the cycles of the moon, covering an area larger than 200 football fields. These were not random piles of dirt, but sacred architecture, ceremonial centers where people from distant regions would gather. The true measure of this network, however, lies in the objects placed inside these mounds. When archaeologists carefully excavate a Hopewell burial, they find a map of ancient America. They uncover obsidian from the distant Yellowstone Valley in Wyoming, a black volcanic glass carried over 2,000 miles. They find gleaming copper expertly hammered into ornate headdresses and breastplates, sourced from the shores of Lake Superior. They recover delicate shells from the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, carved into intricate cups and ornaments. A single ceremonial tomb might contain mica from the Appalachian Mountains, shark teeth from the Atlantic coast, and grizzly bear teeth from the Rocky Mountains. This was not simple barter, it was the movement of ideas, a continent-wide conversation conducted through beautiful objects. So who orchestrated this vast and peaceful exchange? There was no Hopewell emperor, no central capital issuing commands. The system seems to have been driven by a shared spiritual vision, a common set of beliefs that transcended linguistic and tribal differences. It was likely facilitated by a class of ritual specialists or priests who traveled the river highways, carrying both goods and sacred knowledge. These individuals would have been the diplomats of their age, fostering relationships and organizing the great ceremonial gatherings at the earthwork centers. The social structure that allowed this to flourish for centuries was likely based on prestige and reciprocity, not coercion. A local leader gained status not by hoarding wealth, but by redistributing these exotic goods, by hosting feasts, and by sponsoring the construction of the great earthworks that honored the cosmos. The mystery deepens when we ask why it all came to an end. Around 500 years after it began, the flow of exotic goods slowed and then stopped. The great earthworks were no longer expanded or maintained. The interaction sphere faded away. Was it a shift in climate that disrupted the seasonal patterns of gathering and trade? Did new technologies like the bow and arrow change social dynamics, making local conflicts more deadly and travel more dangerous? Or did the core beliefs that held the network together simply evolve, with people turning their focus inward to their own communities? The Hopewell phenomenon leaves us with a powerful legacy, a vision of an ancient America not of isolated tribes, but of interconnected peoples who chose to build a common world through ceremony and shared wonder, a fragile web of peace that for a few centuries connected a continent. High in the cloud forests of northern Peru, where mist clings to the mountainsides, the Chachapoya people built a world apart. Known as the warriors of the clouds, their kingdom was a fortress of fog and stone, a place of breathtaking beauty and profound mystery. Their settlements were unlike any other in the Andes, characterized by hundreds of circular stone houses, often decorated with unusual zigzag and rhomboid patterns. The greatest of these is Cuelap, a colossal citadel perched on a high ridge, its massive outer walls soaring 60 feet tall. This was not a city in the traditional sense, but a vast, fortified community, a stronghold that spoke of a people fiercely protective of their independence. The origins of the Chachapoya are a puzzle in themselves. Their language and artistic style stand apart from their neighbors, suggesting a long and isolated development in their misty realm. Who were they and where did they come from? The answers are as elusive as the clouds that shroud their mountaintops. Their conquest by the Inca Empire in the 15th century adds another layer to their enigmatic story. Even after being absorbed into the vast Inca state, the Chachapoya never fully surrendered their identity. They were known as formidable warriors, and Inca records note they were among the most rebellious subjects in the entire empire, repeatedly rising up against their overlords. This fierce spirit is mirrored in their most haunting legacy, their approach to death. The Chachapoya did not bury their dead in the ground. They built Puran machas, which are striking, human-shaped sarcophagi made of clay and straw, and placed them in impossibly high cliffside niches, often in groups, staring out over the vast canyons. These solitary sentinels were designed to hold the seated remains of important individuals, their bodies mummified and bundled into a fetal position. The effort required to haul these heavy, fragile coffins up vertical rock faces was immense. Why go to such trouble? It was likely a way to protect their honored dead from desecration by enemies or animals, but it was also a powerful spiritual statement. By placing their ancestors closer to the condors and the sky, they were bridging the gap between the earth and the heavens, ensuring the deceased were forever part of the sacred landscape they had called home. This profound connection to their land makes their ultimate fate all the more tragic. When the Spanish arrived, the Chachapoya, already chafing under Inca rule, saw an opportunity. They allied with the conquistadors, hoping to regain their freedom. It was a desperate gamble that backfired catastrophically. The Spanish victory did not restore the Chachapoya kingdom. It simply replaced one master with another, and a far more destructive one at that. Waves of European diseases to which they had no immunity ravaged their population. Their social structure collapsed, and their unique culture was systematically dismantled by colonial policies and forced conversion to Catholicism. The cloud forests, once their impenetrable fortress, could not protect them from this invisible invasion. Over generations, their language faded, their distinct architectural traditions were abandoned, and their knowledge of the Puran machas and their meanings was lost. The warriors of the clouds did not vanish in a single battle, but their culture was gradually dissolved into the colonial tapestry, their defiant voice slowly silenced by disease, displacement, and time. Their stone citadels like Curlap and their lonely cliffside guardians remain, silent monuments to a proud people whose world was ultimately extinguished by a storm they could never have foreseen. A lone raft of balsa wood lashed together with hemp ropes once battled the vast emptiness of the Pacific. This was the Kon-Tiki, and the man who dared to ride it, Thor Heyerdahl, was not an archaeologist digging in the dirt, but an explorer testing a hypothesis on the open ocean. His theory was radical for its time. He looked at the sweet potato, a plant native to the Americas, and found it growing across Polynesia. He studied the wind and current patterns and saw a highway leading straight from the coast of Peru to the distant islands of the South Pacific. He proposed that ancient South Americans, not just Asians, could have been among the first settlers of Polynesia, riding the Humboldt Current on simple but seaworthy rafts. The academic world of the 1940s was deeply skeptical. They argued that pre-Columbian people lacked the vessels and the knowledge for such a monumental crossing. So Heyerdahl decided to prove it was possible, not with a paper, but with a perilous journey. He and his small crew built a raft using only materials and techniques available to indigenous people centuries before. They used large balsa logs for buoyancy, tied with traditional ropes, and relied on a square sail for power. They set out from Peru, casting their fate to the wind and waves. For 101 days, they drifted across 4,000 miles of open ocean, surviving storms, sharks, and the immense psychological weight of the deep. Their successful landing on the Raroya Atoll in Polynesia was a global sensation. It was a triumph of human courage and a powerful blow to the idea that ancient oceans were uncrossable barriers. The Kon-Tiki expedition forced a complete re-evaluation of ancient seafaring. It demonstrated beyond any doubt that the technology of the past was far more capable than we had given it credit for. A simple raft built with Stone Age tools could indeed complete a transoceanic voyage, yet the story does not end there. While Heyerdahl proved the journey was possible, later evidence, especially from modern DNA analysis, has largely disproven his specific theory of South American settlement. The genetic record shows that the primary ancestors of Polynesians came from Southeast Asia, not the Americas. So where does that leave the Kon-Tiki? Its true legacy is not in answering the question of who settled Polynesia, but in revolutionizing how we ask questions about the ancient world. Heyerdahl pioneered the field of experimental archaeology, the practice of testing historical hypotheses through physical reconstruction and reenactment. He showed that to understand the past, we must sometimes risk the present, feeling the pull of the same currents and wrestling the same sails as those who came before. The voyage stands as a permanent challenge to our assumptions, a reminder that the past was filled with bold explorers whose capabilities we are only beginning to comprehend. From the silent, stony gaze of the Olmec heads to the geometric earthworks hidden beneath the Amazon canopy, these 25 mysteries form a breathtaking mosaic of human achievement. We have journeyed past cities that vanished into the mist and stood before pyramids that speak the language of the stars. Each enigma, from the purposeful abandonment of Spiro to the seamless stonework of the Inca, is far more than an archaeological puzzle waiting for a solution. They are profound windows into the hearts and minds of the people who shaped this hemisphere. These were not primitive cultures, but sophisticated societies with complex worldviews, brilliant engineers, and artists whose legacy continues to challenge our understanding of history itself. They managed vast empires without the wheel, recorded their histories in knotted cords, and carved their beliefs into the very landscape on a monumental scale. The true gift of these mysteries is the realization that the ancient Americas were a vibrant tapestry of human experience, filled with innovation, spirituality, and resilience. Their stories remind us that history is not a single narrative, but a chorus of countless voices, many of which are only now beginning to whisper to us from the past. So we turn this final question over to you. Which of these 25 mysteries captures your imagination most powerfully? Does the lost city of the Tairona call to you, or does the haunting legend of the Toltecs hold your fascination? Share your own theories and thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue this exploration together, building a community of curious minds dedicated to listening for the echoes of these lost worlds. The past is never truly gone. It simply waits for us to listen more closely. Every one of these 25 mysteries is a reminder that our shared human story is not a book with a fixed ending, but a living manuscript constantly being revised with each new discovery. The silent stones of the ancient Americas still have so much to teach us, and every fragment we uncover rewrites what we thought we knew about our world. If these enigmas have sparked your curiosity, you can keep the journey of discovery alive right here on this channel. Help us continue our deep dives into history's greatest puzzles by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss an exploration into the forgotten corners of our past. And for those of you eager to learn even more, check the description below. You will find links to sources, suggestions for further reading, and a playlist of related videos exploring ancient mysteries from every corner of the globe. The conversation is just beginning, and your voice is a vital part of it.